Okay, let's talk about the housing market. There is so much noise out there, it's really easy to get lost, right? But what if the real story isn't in all those scary headlines? What if it's kind of hidden in the data? Well, today we're going to cut through all of that noise and see what the numbers are actually telling us versus, what the headlines are screaming.
I'm sure you've seen headlines just like this one. I mean, they're everywhere, predicting total doom and gloom for homeowners, a catastrophe for anybody even thinking about buying. And honestly, it's enough to make anyone a little nervous.
So that really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Does the hard evidence, the actual numbers, does any of that back up this story of a collapsing market? Or is something else going on entirely? Let's dig in and find out. Right, so just before the Thanksgiving holiday, a report from the Mortgage Bankers Association, the MBA, it just dropped. And wow, what it showed was a totally different story from those scary headlines. Get this, the report showed a massive 20% jump in purchase mortgage applications compared to the exact same week last year. A 20% jump. That is a huge signal that buyers are coming back into the market. And it wasn't just that. On top of the year-over-year number, demand also surged 8% in just 1 week. That's the kind of short-term momentum that really gets people to sit up and pay attention. So you put it all together, and this was not just some minor bump. This surge actually pushed mortgage applications to their highest point for the entire year. Now, that is a powerful piece of data that flies right in the face of that whole collapse narrative. So you have to ask, what is driving this sudden positive shift? Well, it turns out there might just be a magic number when it comes to mortgage rates. And this brings us to this idea of a trigger point. The data is suggesting that when the average 30-year mortgage rate falls below this 6.64% threshold, it's almost like a green light for buyers who have been waiting on the sidelines. Demand just consistently starts to wake up. And listen, this isn't just a theory or some one-time thing. It is a clear pattern that we can actually see popping up in the weekly data. Just take a look at this. Since mortgage rates first dipped below that key 6.64% level, we've seen 10 weeks of positive growth in applications, and that's compared to only 7 weeks of negative numbers. You can see it right there. The positive trend is clearly starting to win out. And this really shows you the larger trend perfectly. We are now seeing sustained double-digit growth compared to last year, and we've seen it for 17 weeks straight. That's not a blip, my friends. That is the beginning of a real, measurable trend. So we've looked at the scary headlines, we've looked at the surprising data. What is the key takeaway here? I mean, how should we really be thinking about the housing market right now? Well, ultimately, it really suggests that focusing on these consistent, underlying data trends, that gives us a much clearer, more reliable picture than chasing those crazy, attention-grabbing headlines. The real story isn't in the drama, it's in the data. And as Logan Motashami, who wrote the article we're looking at, points out, it's this consistency that truly matters. See, one good week, that's just an anomaly, but several good weeks in a row, that's how you build a reliable, solid trend. And that is exactly what we are starting to see. So this leaves us with one final question to think about. We've seen how this key mortgage rate can trigger a positive trend. So if rates stay in this sweet spot, or maybe even fall a little bit further, what is the next chapter for the housing market actually going to look like? Well, as we've seen today, it's the data, not the drama, that will tell that story.